This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf has condemned the Israeli occupation statement with regard to the so-called Greater Israel, especially that the occupation is turning a deaf ear to the international calls for ending the Palestinian suffering. The OIC participants urged the international community to pressure the Israeli occupation to end its aggression and siege of Gaza by opening border crossings. And 4 journalists and 6 rescue workers were today massacred in an Israeli airstrike on the Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis, triggering international outrage and condemnation. And those were the major developments. Now the Full News edition. I'm Assia Bakar. Good afternoon. Commissioned by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, the Minister of State in charge of Foreign Affairs, National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, took part in the extraordinary session of the Council of Foreign Ministers of the Member States of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which opened today in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Ahmed Attaf said or condemned the Israeli occupation statement with regard to the so-called Greater Israel, while turning a deaf ear to the international calls for ending the Palestinian suffering. Ahmed Attaf said that the Israeli occupation is obsessed by dealing a blow to the two-state solution and the Palestinian cause. Thus, he called for pulling efforts and having a common position to stand with the Palestinian brothers as well as Egypt and Jordan against the Israeli expansionist plan. And more details about the participation of Ahmed Attaf at the meeting of the OIC with Masoud Sharfi.
The extraordinary meeting, called for and chaired by Turkey in its capacity as the current chair of the organization's Council of Ministers, is devoted to examining the serious developments affecting the Palestinian cause in particular and the Middle Eastern region in general. In light of the continuation of the genocidal war in Gaza, the Israeli plans to militarily reoccupy the enclave and deport its population, and the Israeli occupation expansionist project that threatens the entire region. The representative of the State of Palestine, Riyad Mansour, warned that Israel aims to control Gaza, prolong the war, and block a Palestinian state, citing the Greater Israel plan as proof of its aggression, and stressing that only collective concrete action, not condemnations alone, can hold Israel accountable.
Israel seeks to establish full military control over the Gaza Strip, prolong this war, prevent the establishment of an independent state of Palestine, and implement its declared plans in all their forms against the Palestinian people, plans that the Israeli government has clearly and repeatedly affirmed. Moreover, the statement of the Israeli Prime Minister about achieving the dream of a Greater Israel from the Nile to the Euphrates, which was condemned in the strongest terms, is nothing but further proof of this aggression that targets the entire region and throws it into turmoil. But this unlawful and immoral plan cannot be confronted with anger or condemnations alone. It requires mobilizing all available tools to stop it. Israel has long proven that it has no regard for the UN Charter, international law, or relevant UN resolutions if they are not accompanied by consequences and accountability. What will compel Israel to change its course is our collective ability and the national will of each of us to turn justified condemnations into concrete, practical action.
For his part, Gambia's Foreign Minister Sirin Mudu warned that Israeli aggression and displacement will not bring peace, stressing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, where many children are orphaned and over 300,000 face famine under the blockade.
The continuation of Israeli military actions and aggressions, forceful displacement of the Palestinian people, and the killings and the destruction of properties will not help in actualizing peace and security for the entire region. The humanitarian catastrophe currently in Gaza and other Palestinian territories are both profound and devastating, with far-reaching consequences not only for the region but also for the Muslim Ummah and the international community at large. The unlawful Israeli occupation has disproportionately affected the most vulnerable population. Many children have been orphaned and separated from their families. Reports have revealed that more than 300,000 children in Gaza Strip are facing famine death because of the serious blockage imposed by the Israeli occupation forces.
Throughout the meeting, the OIC participants urged the international community to pressure the Israeli occupation to end its aggression and siege of Gaza by opening border crossings, allowing aid flow, and enabling UN and international agencies to operate freely. Citing UN-backed reports of spreading famine, it held Israel fully responsible, condemning starvation, blockade, and denial of aid as war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, the Israeli occupation is continuing its genocide amidst an international inaction while the world keeps watching a man-made starvation campaign on screens. Today's death toll has risen to 62,744, mainly children and women. The number of injuries has risen to 158,259 since the start of the aggression, while a large number of victims remain under the rubble and ambulance and civil defense crews are unable to reach them. And Palestinian medical sources in the Gaza Strip said that 11 citizens, including 2 children, today died due to famine and malnutrition. Mr. Sharfi again.
It added that the total number of victims of famine and malnutrition has risen to 300, including 117 children. It is worth noting that the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip continues to worsen due to the blockade and shortages of food and medical supplies. The severe famine is intertwined with a genocidal war waged by the Israel occupation. Since last March, the occupation authorities have closed all crossings with the Gaza Strip, preventing the entry of most food and medical aid, causing a famine outbreak within the Strip. The Commissioner General of UNRWA, Philip Lazzarini, said that famine has become the last calamity to befall the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. In statements posted on X, Lazzarini described the situation in Gaza, saying that hell is manifesting itself in all its forms in Gaza. He also said that denial is the most hideous form of dehumanization. Lazzarini called on the Israeli occupation government to stop promoting and spreading misleading narratives and allow humanitarian organizations to deliver aid without restrictions.
Lazzarini further called for granting international journalists to cover the situation independently from within Gaza. In the meantime, the Israeli occupation today committed another crime against 4 journalists and 5 rescue workers and a firefighter, where a massacre in an Israeli strike on the Nasser medical complex in Khan Yunis. The heinous crime triggered condemnation, describing it as a proven and documented war crime. Jama Salmani has the details.
The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs condemned today's horrific massacre committed by the occupying forces against medical, rescue and press teams at the Nasser Hospital complex in Khan Yunis, describing it as a proven and documented war crime and crime against humanity perpetrated in full view of the international community. In its statement, the Palestinian Ministry affirmed that this crime is part of the war of extermination. In its statement, the Palestinian Ministry affirmed that this crime is part of the war of extermination, forced displacement, starvation, and annexation being waged against the Palestinian people, and constitutes a continuing attempt to conceal the extent of the massacres committed by the occupying army, crimes that are a disgrace to all of humanity. It called for the international consensus to end the genocide to be translated without delay into practical and binding measures to force the occupation to comply, including the establishment of a UN peacekeeping force to protect Palestinian civilians and the sustained delivery of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. For its part, the Palestinian Journalists Union said that the Israeli occupation army committed a new horrific massacre against the Palestinian press, adding to its criminal record. In its statement, the union warned the 4 journalists who were killed during the horrific massacre, bringing the number of journalists and media workers killed in Israeli strikes to more than 244. The union affirmed that this heinous crime represents a dangerous escalation in the direct and deliberate targeting of Palestinian journalists and confirms without a shadow of a doubt that the occupation is waging an open war on free media. The Palestinian Journalists Union held the Israeli occupation fully responsible for this crime. It demanded that its leaders be held accountable as war criminals, urging international media organizations to break their silence and take urgent action to protect Palestinian journalists who are targeted daily in the field. It called on the international community, the United Nations, and the International Federation of Journalists to move from verbal condemnation to taking practical and deterrent steps to halt the systematic killing machine against journalists in Gaza.
In a reaction, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, has called for immediate action to end the war in Gaza hours after 5 rescue workers, 4 journalists and a firefighter were killed in an Israeli strike on the Nasser Medical Complex. On social media platform X, Albanese urged governments to take decisive action, warning that inaction perpetuates violence. The rapporteur reiterated her calls for urgent international action, including an end to the blockade of Gaza and arms embargo against the Israeli occupation and the imposition of sanctions. And to Yemen now, the Zionist army has bombed several sites in the Yemeni capital Sana'a, leaving, according to a preliminary toll, 2 martyrs and 5 wounded. Several strikes targeted a Yemeni oil company station and a power plant in the south of Sana'a. This attack by the Zionist occupation army comes a week after similar raids on the Yemeni capital caused enormous material damage. And now the United Nations Security Council votes today on the future of the Blue Helmet peacekeeping mission in southern Lebanon. The Council will vote on a compromise that would keep the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, in place for 1 more year. Under a truce that ended the war between Hezbollah and the Israeli occupation, the latter was meant to completely withdraw from Lebanon, but it has kept forces in several areas and continues to conduct strikes across Lebanon. To Iran now. Iran will resume talks on its nuclear program in Geneva tomorrow with France, the United Kingdom and Germany, 3 countries that were part of the 2015 agreement with Tehran to regulate its nuclear activities and which are threatening to reimpose sanctions. Mr. Sharfi.
According to the Tasnim news agency, this new round of negotiations will take place at the level of deputy foreign ministers in Geneva, following a previous one held in July in Istanbul. France, the United Kingdom and Germany, along with China, Russia and the United States, reached an agreement with Iran in 2015 that provided for significant restrictions on its nuclear program in exchange for a gradual lifting of UN sanctions. The text became obsolete when Washington decided unilaterally to withdraw from the treaty in 2018 under Donald Trump's first presidency. France, the United Kingdom and Germany threatened to reinstate UN sanctions against Iran if no negotiated solution was found by the end of August. Iran disputes the Europeans' legitimacy in invoking this clause provided for in the 2015 agreement. At the time of the US withdrawal, Paris, London and Berlin had reaffirmed their commitment to the text, stating that they wanted to continue trade with Iran. These 3 capitals therefore did not reinstate UN sanctions, but the scheme envisaged by the Europeans to compensate for the return of US sanctions has struggled to be implemented, and many Western companies have been forced to leave Iran.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International and to Western Sahara now. The Moroccan occupation authorities that have expelled 2 human rights activists from the United States and Portugal upon their arrival in the city of Laayoune in the occupied part of Western Sahara. Jamal Selmani has the details.
The 2 activists, members of the Washington-based international non-violence organization, were preparing to meet with former Sahrawi political prisoner Mahfoud Aban Balafkir and other activists. The 2 activists had managed on Friday and Saturday during a visit to the occupied city of Dakhla to meet with activists, human rights defenders and journalists from whom they gathered testimonies regarding the daily ordeal endured by the Sahrawi people. They had momentarily escaped the vigilance of the Moroccan occupation authorities, who had mistaken them for tourists. These meetings allowed them to shed further light on the issue of Sahrawi civilian prisoners held in Moroccan jails, the abuses they suffer, and the violations they are subjected to. The expulsion of the 2 activists highlights the media blackout policy adopted by Morocco to prevent the world from learning about the situation in the occupied Sahrawi territories. Earlier, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres expressed his serious concern over the continued deterioration of the situation in the occupied Sahrawi territories due to the ongoing human rights violations by the Moroccan occupation in the region.
And now to Sudan. 6 displaced women and their children have been kidnapped by the Rapid Paramilitary Support Forces RSF from the Abu Shouk camp in North Darfur in the besieged city of El Fasher. Local sources said that the RSF entered the camp home to 190,000 eternally displaced persons and committed abuses including killings and abductions, according to rights groups and witness accounts. The women aged 18 to 55 were taken along with their children, sparking fears they could be subjected to severe abuse. On Friday, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights said the RSF had abducted at least 40 displaced people from the same camp on August 16th. Their whereabouts remain unknown. And back to the country now. The Directorate General of Communications at the Presidency of the Republic has offered its sincere condolences to the family of the late journalist and artist Khalid Luma, an iconic figure of Channel 3 of the national radio. Late Khalid Luma passed away yesterday, Sunday. He left behind a brilliant career at the Algerian radio, during which he captivated the hearts of his fans, colleagues and listeners, contributing throughout his career to promoting art through the airwaves. Meanwhile, the Minister of Communication, Mohamed Mezyan, also offered his sincere condolences to the family and colleagues of late radio host and artist Khalid Luma. You still listen to Radio Algeria International. And the recent lifting by Algeria of its reservation on Article 15, Paragraph 4 of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women has sparked a heated controversy between, on the one hand, those who see in it a new step forward in the promotion of women's rights, and on the other hand, those who warn against the consequences of a growing alignment with models deemed incompatible with the customs and traditions of the Algerian people. Jamal Salmani.
The Algerian news agency APS said, according to sources, that it was the simple technical measures made necessary by the disappearance of the reason that had initially led Algeria to make a reservation on the text on Article 15, Paragraph 4, at the time of the ratification of the Convention in 1996. At that time, Algeria had made reservations on 5 provisions due to their incompatibility with national laws, particularly the Family Code and the Nationality Code. With the gradual evolution of national legislation, Algeria has lifted some of these reservations, as was the case in 2005, when Algeria withdrew its reservation on the provisions of the Convention recognizing the right of the mother to transmit her nationality to her children, a measure taken following the amendment of the Nationality Code. As for the reservation recently lifted, it concerns Article 15, Paragraph 4 of the Convention, which recognizes that men and women have the same rights with regard to the choice of residence and domicile. Algeria had made this reservation in 1996 on the basis of the provisions of Article 37 of the Family Code at the time, but this article was repealed in 2005, and consequently the Algerian reservation lost its grounds and is no longer based on any legal foundation in national legislation. Thus, contrary to what some voices and pens have suggested in recent days, this lifting of the reservation will not entail any modification of national laws, given that the Algerian approach regarding this type of convention in particular consists first in amending national legislation and only then, in a second stage, proceeding to the lifting of reservations recorded at the international level. Another important point, the maintenance of the reservation on Article 15, Paragraph 4, was exploited by parties hostile to Algeria to promote, within human rights organizations, the idea that Algeria was applying discrimination between men and women concerning the right to travel and to choose residence, whereas Algerian legislation provides for no restrictive measures against women in this regard.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and the Minister of Mujahideen or War Veterans, Mr. Laider Biga, has emphasized the state's commitment to preserving national memory and adopting a relevant methodology for historical research with the aim of refuting colonialist thesis targeting national history and its symbols. Presiding over the ceremony marking the 30th anniversary of the creation of the National Center for Studies and Research on the National Movement of the Revolution of November 1st, Mr. Biga emphasized that the Ministry of Mujahideen and right holders has for decades supported the center as an effective tool to preserve national historical heritage, ensure the continuity of research, and keep national memory alive on solid scientific foundations for future generations.
The Ministry of Mujahideen and Rights Holders has continuously supported this scientific institution and accompanied it in carrying out its noble mission by putting in place the mechanisms capable of ensuring the continuity of its research activity and strengthening its presence in various national and international scientific spaces. Over the past decades, the Ministry has been keen to make this center an effective tool in the implementation of the national policy of historical scientific research and has remained constantly committed to ensuring that the national memory is alive, deeply rooted and built on solid scientific foundations. This institution has constituted an effective tool in the implementation of the state's policy aimed at preserving the national historical heritage and presenting it to future generations in a responsible academic and intellectual manner that establishes and furnishes a unifying and coherent national discourse.
Mr. Biga affirmed that Algeria relies on national unity to confront hostile campaigns and reiterated the ministry's commitment to making the National Center for Studies and Research on the National Movement and the Revolution of November 1st a key tool in preserving historical memory, highlighting President Tebboun's strong emphasis on history and memory as essential pillars of national identity. And with this, we come to the end of our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to a program devoted to the city of Miliana.
Hello and welcome to Discover Algeria, a program in which we'll let you discover or know more about the Algerian heritage, to include history, traditions, popular beliefs, social rituals, celebrations, as well as many aspects of the Algerians' life dating back to the Berber or Amazigh era until the Muslims one. This week I'll take you to the town of Miliana, located 160 kilometers southwest of Algiers. Miliana, which is the Arabic for the plentiful, is geographically located south of the Dahra Massif at 740 meter high on the wooded southern flank of Mount Zakar, 5 kilometers north of the Shelif River and overlooking the Zakar Plateau to the west. Now some history about this old city. Let's start with the Roman era. Miliana was an ancient town in the Roman province of Mauritania, Caesariensis. Some said that Miliana is the derivative of the Latin name of the daughter of Roman patrician, namely Manlia, owners also of the large estates in the area. Became under the reign of Augustus a colony of Colonia Lulia Augusta Zucaba in the province of Mauritania Caesariensis. It was constituted as a Roman colony under Emperor Augustus. Zucaba is also said to be of Phoenician origin, which means the wheat market. Some historians, for their part, said that it comes from the Berber Libico origin, namely Ezekir Abadir, which means the mountain of God Abadir of the Zakar mountain. According to documents also found in Miliana, a funerary stele actually mentioned that the great son and the great-great-son of Pompey, a military and political leader of the late Roman Republic, were buried there. In late antiquity, it was an episcopal see, which is the official seat of a bishop, and has been, since 1967, a titular see, which is a former diocese that no longer functions of the Catholic Church. Milyana, as a Muslim city, was founded in the 10th century by Bulughyn ibn Ziri, the founder of the Ziri dynasty, on the site of an ancient Roman city, as I told you earlier, Zukaba. Arab travelers evoked Milyana in their writing, with Ibn Mashara and Al-Abdari, who wrote beautiful poems in tribute to the city. For his part, Ibn Battuta evoked numerously Milyana in his writings. It's worth noting that Milyana was part of the Almohad Empire. It was also the headquarters of the Bani Ghanya tribe, and it was also part of the Maghrawi conquest, and particularly at the Yahya ibn Ghania reign. In 1372, Ibn Khaldun described the city there in his books and said that it was part of the Maghrawa Bni Wursifan tribe in the Shalif plain, quoting also Bulughyn that he drew the plan of Al-Jazair, Milyana and Limdiya. In 1830, the town came under the control of the Emir or Prince Abd al-Qadir and became a major stronghold against the increasing French occupation of Algeria. It was also a cultural center which was traveled from everywhere to visit it and learn from its scholars. If we come back to the Roman era, I just want for the little story to tell you that Zukaba is featured in the film Gladiator, where it is falsely introduced as the name of a Roman province. The Muslim quarters in Milyana contains a covered marketplace. It has a modern section of the town center known as the Place Corneau, or the Place of the Clock, and it's shaded with centuries, trees, and contains a clock tower, formerly a minaret. Milyana is primarily an agricultural town. Its vineyards, orchards, and gardens, which lie below the town center, are fed by water from nearby mountains that usually have snow in winters. This what gave the city its name of Milyana, as its abundance was widely renowned. There were also in Milyana famous tile factories, flour mills, and other light industries. And many people were born or lived in this city. For instance, the well-known resistant Mustafa Farruhi, and the founder of the Algerian Muslim Scouts, namely Mohammed Bourras. There was also Augustin Ferrando, an Orientalist painter and director of the School of Fine Arts in Iran. And, of course, Sid Ahmed bin Yusuf al-Rashidi, whose mausoleum was classified as a historic monument in